Hey guys, what's going on? It's Preston here from the Legendarium. Welcome to episode number 5 of 30-Minute Author Interviews. This week, our guest is Stefan Bolz. Make sure you stay tuned all the way through the end of the episode. After the music is over at the end of the episode, Stefan and I will have a discussion about the ending of The Traveler. He will even read the ending of the screenplay to us, so it does contain some spoilers if you have not read his story, but I will give you warning before we start talking about it. Until then, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy 30 Minutes with Stefan Bolz. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. Welcome, Stefan Bolz. Thanks for being here with us today for this episode.
Thanks, Preston. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
For those that don't know anything about you or what you do, why don't you just give them a little bio about who you are and what you do?
So we only have 30 minutes, right? So
right.
I'm gonna be quiet. I was born in Germany. I grew up in Germany in the kind of a similar area that I live in now in the States. I came here in 1996, and since then I have worked in real estate mostly to make money, and started, I think it was about 1999, 2000, when I got my GED and went to college, and that's where I started writing seriously with screenplays and stuff like that. So that's the very short version of it.
Right.
51 years.
What inspired you to get into writing?
Just like so many interviews that I've heard, there's always this little moment as a child or in childhood where there was this urge or this wish to write, and I had that pretty, not that young, but I think I was 16. I read a lot of spy novels and Robert Ludlum and stuff like that. So I started an action spy novel when I was 17, but I never finished it, but it was always kind of there. And then I started another story in my 20s. So it was always in the background. It just came into the foreground. I think I was in college, my first year of college, and I took a creative writing class, and my writing teacher, I wrote a poem or something, and my writing teacher said, "You really have to write." And I remember exactly how she looked, where she said it in the classroom. I don't know what I was wearing, but it was a very, very vivid memory. And since then, I think I took that to heart, and I just started writing after that.
Sounds good. So one of the main reasons we're featuring you today is you have a story out that you are doing something a little special with, which we'll just jump into it. You're doing a kind of a story catching thing with your story, The Traveler. Before we get into the special project you're doing, why don't you kind of give us, where did the idea for The Traveler come from? What was the inspiration for it?
The inspiration for it came from, I think it was in November of 2014 when I was watching Sam Peralta, publishing one Future Chronicles after the other, and I just couldn't find my way into it until I think it was November 2014 when he announced the Time Travel Chronicles. And I wrote to him right away and I said, "Listen, I have a story. I want to be in there. Please, 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 I'll send you cookies and whatever." And he read, I think, a couple of chapters of The Fourth Sage or something. And he said, "All right, tell me what you have." And I had this idea about this girl that lost her father, and he's a master blacksmith, and he leaves her a notebook in his workshop with detailed instructions how to build a time machine. And I wrote it in like 3 weeks, and sent it to him. I was the first that sent it to him in January of 2015. And Sam said, why are you sending it now? It's not going to come out until October. Why don't you publish it yourself? So I said, no, I want to be in the Time Travel Chronicles. So, and that was basically the origin of it. And then it came out in November of 2015. And then I published it in February of 2016. So that was the seed of it.
Did you have a hard time when writing it? Did you have a hard time keeping it to a short story length? Did you want to expand on it?
No, it was almost exactly 10,000 words. It was never a bigger story in my head. It just flowed to that. I knew the ending, and I worked towards that, and it just never gave me any problems. This was the only book, or one book, I had never. It was the most smooth, easy writing, with the book and with the screenplay afterwards. I didn't have any, sometimes you have weeks and weeks of agonizing, of thinking, coming up with stuff, and it just came out. It was a true gift in that sense.
When did you get the idea to do a screenplay for it?
That was actually right after I wrote it. A friend of mine who is a screenwriter, I asked him, do you want to help me put this into a screenplay? Because I think I have a background in screenwriting. I studied it for like 5 years in the early 2000s. And I thought it would make a really, really nice indie movie. Mm-hmm. And I started the screenplay the moment the short story was finished. We just basically put the story on 4x6 cards, each scene, and we added 2 additional timelines of story, because the story is only 58 pages, which would roughly translate to about a 50-page script. And if I would do it piece by piece, and so we needed about 90 minutes, so we added 40 some pages.
Wow.
And put it into a screenplay format with 2 additional storylines that all add to the main storyline. And then it was just in my basement in a box, the 4x6 cards, until the story came out with Sam's Future Chronicles, the Time Travel Chronicles, in November. And that's when I said, all right, I just want to write the screenplay now. And it really didn't take long, because it was already all on cards, fleshed out. It took about 5 weeks to write the screenplay. It was nice. I loved the process of it. I loved it.
Gotcha. Did you get much fan response back when it was published in the Time Travel Chronicle?
So a lot of people cried, which it makes me happy. I know it's a little bit perverted to just think, oh, I made somebody cry today. Yeah. But as a writer, I think that's not a bad thing to hear. So I had a lot of feedback on, they were touched and they have read it. Maybe some readers said they had just lost somebody, or it reminded them of somebody that they loved who died. And so it was very touching, and it just gave me the momentum to, do the screenplay and stay on it. We need the readers' feedback as writers.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure, like you said, it's always good to hear from your readers that it touched them in some way, whether
Yes.
It made them laugh, cry.
Right.
I know you about had me crying with your story that you did for Tales of the Apocalypse, The Protector.
Oh, right.
Such a great story.
I'm glad. No, I'm serious, because it is, our lives can be so like stressful, or whatever words we use. And now with the media, we're so in it, mm-hmm. And then to be just taken out for 1 second, to just maybe remember something else, or go to a place that is either filled with, quiet, or a certain sadness, or even just joy of reading something. I think that's worth a lot, and then you can go back to your regular life and continue. But I think those moments are very important.
Yeah, me and my wife were actually talking about this the other day, and I was telling her how when I read, I want to be transported somewhere. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to, like you said, with how instant all the news is and everything in the world, how instant It seems, that sometimes you just need to escape, because it just seems like there can be a lot of negativity out there, regardless of what topic it's on.
Right.
You just
Right.
need to be able to escape, and just get away for a few minutes, and to get lost in a story is just, it's a great thing to do.
Right. Right.
So, why don't you tell everybody about this, this project that you're doing with the Traveler?
It happened about, I want to say 4 to 5 weeks ago. I don't know where the idea especially came from, but I had the idea of making the Traveler paperback into a much smaller format, a 4x6 format that could easily fit into a jeans pocket, for example, or a pocketbook, or shirt pocket. And I ordered 100 of them that I'm going to give away. And the instructions on the back of the book say, grab it, read it, and pass it on. So basically, I'll put it in bus stations, or give it to friends that are traveling, or send it to people who are traveling, or giving it to friends that are travel.
Mm-hmm.
And so you basically, what it is you read the book, it's free. Then you tag your location at the end of the book. You can see the other people where they were. And there's a QR code where you could upload a picture of you to the Facebook group, and then you pass it on to the next person. So it's an hour read, and it's a quick read, and you can read it at an airport or in an airplane, and then just give it away to somebody else. And you can basically track on the Facebook group where it was, because the books are numbered. So you can say, oh, number 34 is now is in in Tibet, or I don't know where it's going to end up, but that's the idea. The second part of that is, once the 100 are given away, I'm going to clear it on Amazon. It's already there, that people can buy it. It's going to be $6 plus shipping. They can buy it and then do the same thing. So you can buy the book, you read it, and then you give it away to somebody as a gift and start your own. It's going to be, then whoever buys the book will have his or her own signed this book. This book was gifted by, and they have their name in it. And then it will show up maybe all over the world later on. So that's the idea of just, spreading the goodwill a little bit, and getting my name out there at the same time.
Will the books that people can order on Amazon, will they have the QR code so those people can also?
It's exactly the same format. It's just, it's not a numbered edition, but it's the edition where people can have their own name in it on the first page, but the rest is going to be exactly the same, QR code, everything. And you can order it from all over Amazon around the world.
I think it's a great idea, because I know people around here do the whole, I don't know the official name, the catching thing.
Geocaching.
Yeah, geocaching.
Yes.
There's a few around here, and I know a few people that do it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody doing it with a book. So
Yeah, me neither.
I think this is actually a great idea. And for those, if you're listening to this podcast when it releases, Stefan Bolz is going to be giving the Legendarium listeners, he's going to have 5 copies. So make sure you check out the show notes to find out what you need to do in order to be one of the 5 that receive one. So you said that you're doing a screenplay for the Traveler as well. Where are you submitting that screenplay to?
Oh boy, it's really hard. You just have to imagine that about 40,000 screenplays are being registered with the Writers Guild of America every year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. So, agents are bombarded, producers are bombarded, actors, I guess, are bombarded with them. So that's also a thing where you kind of have to think outside the box. So I submitted it. I have a couple of friends, and I submitted to them. They submitted it. And I went to this one competition where it was in the top 10 semifinals. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, So what I decided was, it was actually after a reading I did for the Traveler in a bookstore here in my area, where this one person said, you have to just do the movie yourself. And that's what I'm thinking about doing. I have a friend who has a high-end camera and some lenses, and he knows what to do, because I really don't. Mm-hmm. I just have the vision in my head. So I'm gonna see if we can make it happen ourselves. We're getting the script to a point where it's really, really good right now. We're gonna do that over the next couple of weeks or months, and then see if we can. I have an actress that I did a reading. There was a reading with a group of actors. They did the script reading, and the actress that read T, the main character, was really amazing. I mean, I was almost crying when she just talked when she read the dialogue. It was so beautiful. So maybe with her, we're going to go through the script, get it really good to a good place, and then maybe shoot some scenes and see if we can generate some interest. Maybe we'll do a Kickstarter or GoFundMe or something. But I'm thinking maybe we should just do it ourselves and see if we can get it together.
Gotcha. That was going to be my next question is have you looked at Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any of those other avenues that are out there?
Yeah, we will do those once we have the script really good, in good shape, and maybe we'll do a couple of scenes so we can shoot a little trailer for the movie, and that tells the story in a little, a couple of scenes, and then do a Kickstarter campaign with it for sure. It would be awesome.
What's because I'm sure a lot of people aren't really that familiar with screenwriting. What's been the hardest part of the whole screenwriting process and turning it from a short story to a screenplay?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that, because I see everything in the books that I write in Technicolor 3D camera angles anyway, and that's how I write the books. So for me, it's not a big jump from taking the book and putting it into a script format. I mean, it still is, because you can't, if it's a regular book, let's say I wanted to put the White Dragon first one into a screenplay, you would have to cut and really see which scenes are important, what's the theme of the story, does it serve the story? And you have to ask yourself a couple of questions to do that. But I write in a very visual way for me anyway, so there's not a lot of transitioning from the scenes I see in my head in the book to the scenes I see in my head in the screenplay. And in the screenplay, what you do is you write what you see. T goes to the forge and she shovels the coal into the forge, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Or she picks up a hammer, and then you see that you have the dialogue as it happens. So it's already in my head as a movie, and I just have to kind of band that onto, not just, it's never just, but you have to kind of just translate that, and it's not so hard for me to do that.
Gotcha. It might be too early in your process. Do you think you're going to be able to film most of this near where you live, or are you going to have to travel somewhere else?
No, it's very, very close. There are only 5 locations in the movie. Mm-hmm. There's a high school, a workshop, a hardware store, and a house. That's basically it, and then a little bit outside, but it's all around here, and I have scoped out most of the locations already. So it's going to be a very low budget, very local film.
Awesome. Are you going to do a Stan Lee and have an appearance in the movie anywhere?
Oh God, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I know Peter Jackson is in all of his movies, and once you know where he is, it's so hysterical to see him.
I had no idea. Is he really?
Yes, he's definitely in the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. You can see him in each one of them, and it is so funny. Once he gets hit with an arrow in book 3. In the Return of the King. Oh my God, it's hysterical.
That's funny.
But I might, why not?
Well, you can be. I don't think this really gives away any of the story. You can be one of the people that's buying a Christmas gift in the hardware store right before Christmas.
That's right. I can do that. I can talk all in German, so it would be very confusing.
There you go. That's hilarious. It seems I haven't read all of your stories, I'll admit.
Mhm.
I've read some of them. Most of your characters in your stories are going on a journey or finding out about something about themselves. Um, is that something you set out to do when you write a story, to have um, the reader come away with some kind of lesson learned?
I don't think so. It's more that my life is like that because when I was in my early 20s, I was in the army in Germany, and I remember the day, I think I was 21 or 22. I was married, and I had a good job, and I had a baby on the way and everything. And I drove the car home, and I realized, is this everything? There must be more. And I couldn't even define what that meant. You know what I mean? It was almost like a spiritual crisis in the car on my way home. And there must be more to life than our daily grind. Even some of it is nice and all that, but I always felt like there must be something more. And that kind of set me on a path of spiritual searching. And that started when I was 22, and I'm, 30 years later, I'm still on that journey. And I think all I'm doing in my books is write about that journey. There's no other way for me there's nothing else for me to write, because that's that's what I know. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because it is like that. It is, finding out who we are and going through the darkness to the light and all those things. It's all in the stories. And I don't think I can write anything else. It always comes back to that same topic or theme.
Do you end up coming away with something from your books every time you write one? Does it help you along with your journey that you're going through?
Oh, 100%.
Does it
I
really?
mean, yeah, 100%. I feel like, that every author channels a little bit of something else. And I always feel like the messages that or that beautiful moment in, for example, in The Traveler or in some other stories, like with Protector in the end, when he dies knowing that he is amongst his pack,
Mm-hmm.
the wolf. Those things, I think those scenes are for me first,
Mm-hmm.
right? I get them for me first, and then they fill me up with that feeling, and then they spill out for the reader. So it is kind of always the same, that moment of being lifted up and transported to a different playing field, above where we are right now. You might call it God or whatever it is, whatever you call it, but I think it is kind of like a spiritual experience. And that seems to be the end of all my books. I don't know. I can't even, I'm not even controlling it. I don't even want to do that. It just happens that way with each of them.
So for the famous Hank Garner question, then, so when you're writing, do you plan your books out, or are you just flying by the seat of your pants?
Well, I really only have individual pieces of information. I don't have a lot of information. I might have a little bit of the ending here and there. I think I know where I want it to go, or where I think what I know is the feeling I want to end up with for the reader, and the feeling that I want to end up with when I write it. But that's all.
So I went online and let people know I was going to be interviewing you. So we're going to jump into a segment that we call Questions from Your Fans. So
I know a couple of them already.
Some of them I wasn't sure what to ask, so I haven't written all of them down. But
Okay.
Chris Freed would like to know, which traditionally published authors and which indie authors do you like to read?
I mean, I have a problem with that, because not with the question, not with Chris, but I read the Farseer trilogy in my 20s by Robin Hobb, and I'm so happy that Hank is going to have her on his podcast. She's like my favorite author of all times, and I read her fantasy series, The Farseers, and it basically prevented me from ever being able to read anything else again and enjoying it as much. It just, when you read a book that is so amazing that anything else you pick up after that is like, okay, it's good, but it'll just never touch that. And that I had that when I was in my 20s. So thanks, Robin Hobb, for not, for giving me that gift of, I have read that book like 7, 8 times, but so she's my favorite author. And I don't read that much. I'm a more visual person. I watch a lot of movies and stuff like that. So I'm not totally into reading. I love Hank's books. I read all of them because I think they also have a little bit of a spiritual side, a little bit takes you out of that ordinary into something extraordinary. And I love them. I don't know if that's a good answer for you.
No, those work fine. I actually just had that moment you talked about, reading a book and having a hard time picking up another one after it.
Oh, good.
Yep. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Chris
would also like to know, he says, tell us what it's like for you to talk about your books in front of a classroom filled with children.
Oh my God, that's the best feeling. I mean, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. It depends on the where you are. I have read in a gymnasium filled with 150 kids, which is a true force of nature. And I have read in classrooms with 30 or 25 kids or 20 kids or even 15. And it's a very, very nice setting. I love that whole thing of reading to kids is my favorite part of being an author because the interaction is so, genuine and they love it and I love it and it's great. It's my favorite.
So I'm curious, because I've seen you post about it. Which books when you go and talk to children, which book do you talk to them about, or do you just talk about writing in general?
No, I most of the time I do the Three Feathers,
okay.
Because that's the 3rd and 4th grade is like the ideal audience, and I want to say 3rd and 4th grade and people who are on some kind of a spiritual path. Okay. Both readers groups react really well to it.
Gotcha. The next question from a fan, and I'm probably going to say his name wrong, so I'm sorry, is it Seamus Colgan? He would like to know how the Traveler screenplay/film project is developing.
Yeah, I think I answered pretty much that with the previous question.
Gotcha.
I don't know how to pronounce his name too. I heard it's Seamus.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
We'll have to find out from him.
I will have to find out. He has to give us a little audible.
There we go.
Piece of audio.
He also would like to know, do you know if any other authors are interested in story catching any of their books?
I think Paul Kohler, after we talked, he mentioned that he's a really good idea, and he might want to pursue that as well in the future with one of his short stories.
Awesome. And his final question is, when are you traveling back to Byron again?
To Bayern? Yeah. We're hoping to go there on Christmas. So I might, if he's close, we can meet for a Glühwein, which is this hot cider.
There you go. And then you can figure out how to say his name.
Exactly. He has to introduce himself to me, and I'll tape it and send it to you.
Sounds good. And speaking of Hank Garner, the next couple questions come from him. He would like to know, when do you plan on revisiting the Fourth Sage?
Okay, very good question. So I have one more book in the White Dragon series, the 3rd book. I'm going to finish that. That's going to just be this year. And then I'm going back to the Fourth Sage because I have already 15,000 words in the next Fourth Sage installment, and there will be that one plus another one plus a prequel to the Three Feathers. And that will complete a 5-book series called the Circularity Saga, and all those books, the Three Feathers and the Fourth Sage, all those are part of it, part of one big circular story.
Gotcha. So how this isn't from Hank, but how many books are going to be in your the White Dragon series?
Well, there will be 4, but I'm gonna the series now ends at book 3. Then there is a 4th one that would kind of wrap up the story on a different playing field, but I think the first three are the most important ones, and then I'll do some other books, and then I'll come back to that and write the fourth book, because the Casey's journey in that realm is over at the end of book 3, and then we might have an additional couple of books, but that's like a later date.
Is the additional one the crossover that you and Chris Porto might be working on?
That is that would be after that.
Okay.
But it is definitely something that will come, or not. But it's something. It's definitely a thought that we're considering in the future for sure.
Gotcha. And then Hank's final question. I'm just going to read what he wrote down because I didn't know a good way to question it.
Sure.
He says, Stefan told me one time that he considers writing to be his life's work. I would like him to talk about the calling of a writer. Is it something that he feels is a God-given gift, so to speak?
I think you can recognize when it's your gift if you are, on one hand, drawn to it, and on the other hand, struggling with it. I don't think it's always clear cut that you just have this gift and you're just pushing out those beautiful words to the ether and you're a happy person and everything is groovy. I think your gift is the struggle that you're sharing with the world. So I think, yes, it is. And it's basically, writing is just one expression with that struggle that we all have. You can be a painter, or you can be, I mean, in my view, you can be anything, any occupation that you have can represent artistically that struggle. And you can be a plumber or, whatever, whenever you do something wholeheartedly, I think you can express that, whatever that is that connects all of us, you can do beautiful work. And I think as a writer, it's just a little bit more visible and more, you're writing about that struggle. But I think that's the gift, to have people partake in that and come up with something for them.
Gotcha. And the final fan question comes from Will Swardstrom. He says, David Hasselhoff, yes or no?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because you have to understand. You have to understand something. Germany is very weird, right? Their taste in music is 98% American and 2% German, and then maybe there's one other percent that is an very odd sense of music, for example. And David Hasselhoff was huge in Germany. He filled stadiums with singing, with concerts.
Right.
So he was the wall came down, and he stood in Berlin at the crumbling wall, and he sang, "I've been looking for freedom." And there were thousands of people like cheering, and he was huge. So Knight Rider was my favorite show when I was in my late teens. And so, yes, 100%.
Sounds good. Well, that leads us now to the final segment of the podcast, the legendary ending. So these questions are just random, kind of non-book related questions, just whatever the first thing that pops into your head. What songs are currently on your writing playlist?
I would say Dragon Force. That's a band.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
If you were stuck in a zombie apocalypse, which one of your book characters would you want to be stuck with?
I would definitely say Casey, because she just went through this training and she's in really good shape. So I think she would be the best person to have with me.
And if you could pick a character from any media source, comics, books, movies, whatever, who would you want?
Also in the apocalypse?
Yep, for the zombie apocalypse.
I would pick what's the guy from the main Transformer guy? Optimus Prime? Yes. I'm like, I would probably be in good shape with him next to me.
Yeah, probably.
You have a truck and you can be a huge robot, so it's perfect.
There you go. If you had a time machine, where would you travel and why?
The only thing I can think of is I would really love to be like 100,000 years in the future, and just for an instant see what where it was going, and then probably be so terrified that I regret the decision. I mean, because it would be so strange and different, I'm sure. Maybe not better or worse or anything, but that would be cool to just see like 100,000 years in the future what's going on.
Awesome.
Maybe you're stuck in the middle of a supernova. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
That's the problem with time travel.
Yeah. If you wrote under a pen name, what genre would you write and why?
I would probably write romance novels because they sell.
Right.
That's the only reason I would write them. I can't write them for the life of me. I would just write them. I was thinking about it a couple of times. Maybe I should have a pen name and just write romance novels and make money.
That's funny.
But that's what I would do.
And if you had to pick one genre to read for the rest of your life, which would it be and why?
I would definitely have fantasy.
Fantasy.
Because I think it gives you the broadest sense of, it doesn't have to be epic fantasy, but fantasy you can have like urban fantasy and all this other stuff. But I think for the imagination, fantasy is, for me, in my opinion, you have the biggest, broadest, most storylines possible, I think.
Gotcha. And now for the famous question. A penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say and why is he here?
God, I was struggling with that question when you had the 10 questions.
Yep.
In the author interview. I was like, what am I gonna say? I just see him fully, like, totally soaking wet, and the rainwater is dripping, from his thing, and he's making a puddle on the floor, and he has a cigar in his mouth, and it just went out. And he says, "Can you please give me a lighter?" That's the only thing I can think of.
Hey, that works. That's funny. And then before we wrap up, do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh boy. I think be honest with yourself is probably the advice that I would give to myself. It's hard to look at your stuff, but it's also, I think, not looking is what makes this world so crazy, because we're all so involved in somebody else's stuff, this person's stuff and that person's stuff. And I think we fail to see our own. And I think if we would look a little more into our own, it would ease up. It's like, all right, let's leave this guy alone. Let me focus on my own. That would be my advice to everybody.
Sounds good.
Myself, most of all.
Right. Where can listeners go if they want to learn more about you or your books?
I mean, I would just go to to my Amazon page, or find me on Facebook. I have a ThirdScribe page, website, stefanbolz.thirdscribe.com, but I'm not really using it as much as I should. But I think Facebook and Amazon, you'll find me.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Preston. Appreciate it.
Well, guys, that's our time for this episode. Thank you for joining us for 30-minute author interviews. But as I promised, Stefan and I have a discussion about the ending of The Traveler, and he also reads to us the ending of the screenplay for The Traveler. So if you have not read The Traveler by Stefan Bolz, this is where you're going to want to turn the podcast off. But if you have read the story and you would like to hear a little bit more about the ending, then tune in for a few more minutes with Stefan Bolz. And for those turning it off, until next time, stay legendary. So, I just finished reading The Traveler last night. And
oh, cool.
I didn't want to spoil anything on the air. When writing that story, did you have in your mind, even though you didn't put it in the original short story, did you have in your mind that she decided to live her life to the fullest? Or when did you decide to do that?
No, that's really interesting, because that came up in the screenplay. She was unsure. she was sitting in the machine and she had her 2 feet over the pedals, and she wasn't sure what she would do, and I would leave it up to the reader if she would, what she would do with it. But then in the screenplay, I kind of got a little deeper into her character, and I felt that she would never use the time machine again. She would turn it off and she would go back to her life. And from that moment on, she would live her life like to the fullest, as I said. But she would never go back to the time machine and she would never travel again because, first of all, she would never be able to have that emotional power to activate it. She would never be able to do that again.
Gotcha.
And there would be no reason. That was her most fervent wish, was to see her dad again. And she would not be able to generate that again, I think. So that's why she turns it off. And that was the last time it was used.
So will she destroy it in the screenplay so that way no one can ever stumble upon it?
No, because nobody will ever be able to use it. The notebook is burned. And it says in the notebook the most important person in the machine is the traveler.
Right.
So without the traveler, maybe somebody could come along and have that same emotional urgency and do it. But in the screenplay, the last scene is a speech of hers that basically says that it's this, about her dad saying traveler in the end and stuff like that, but that she would not use it again.
Yeah, I remember when I got done reading it, I was like, oh man, where does she go? Where would I go if I just experienced something like that? And then I read your notes at the end and I was like, I like that. I like that ending. She decided to just live her life. I really like that. Right at the end, when she's leaving, her dad stops and kind of looks back to where she left. Was it the clothes that she was wearing that kind of tipped him off?
No. No, it was everything. I think it was her behavior. So in the screenplay, let me just read this to you because this is the final scene.
Okay.
It's basically she turns the machine off, she goes into the house. And the door closes and we zoom out of the window and we go up into the starry sky. And it says in her voice, "In the years to come, I often thought back to the day when my dad said his final word to me. At first I thought he said draw, so I drew the workshop and everything in it. Then I thought he said drawer and I found the notebook. Years later I realized that neither one was true, even though those were close enough so that I could find the drawer and the notebook with his plans for the time machine. No, his final words were not draw or drawer. When I went back in time and watched him through the window of his shop and he stopped for a second, as if he knew something he couldn't quite explain, not more than a fleeting feeling and the sense that something extraordinary had just happened. I believe now that he knew back then that I had come back, that I had found the notebook and built the machine. I thought I saw pride in him and sadness and love, so much love. The word he muttered before he left this world was traveler."
I like it.
Yeah, so I think he felt that extraordinary, that just happened, whatever that was, and however the little clues he got, she's there at 11 o'clock in the morning or stuff like that. But I think he felt that something out of the ordinary just happened. And that's where he kind of stopped for a second, I don't think he could probably pinpoint it specifically, but it just, for him, it just, as for her, I think they had the same experience at that moment.
I think it'd be a cool little movie.
It would be a great movie.
Yeah.
It would be a great movie. Yeah. And the thing is, the two additional storylines, the one is the selling of the equipment. Throughout the movie, they want to sell the equipment, and without the equipment, she can't build the machine and she can't go back and stuff like that. It was a big, and then she gets bullied by the school bullies, like relentlessly throughout, and she has to, manage all that and build a machine and have the courage to flip the switch. So I think it would be a really great story as a movie.
Did you have a hard time writing the extra scenes to make it movie
Not
length?
at all.
Really?
Not at all. They were just like, bullying scenes and then trying to get those equipment sold was easy because it was in the same emotional sphere as her major story. So it just added to it. It wasn't anything that I had to kind of pull out, because we all know bully scenes, we can come up with many of them from school. And so it wasn't hard at all.
Oh, screwed that one up. Blooper reel.